Let me know if this sounds familiar. You've just queued into a game of Overwatch 2, you've locked your favorite hero, you're ready to pop off and get play of the game and just absolutely dominate the enemy team, but then maybe after the first round or after just a couple of team fights, you're noticing that maybe your teammates are dying a little more than you'd like them to, maybe a couple situations didn't go your way and it just feels like the enemy team is just straight up better, so you just write this one off as a loss, say GG go next, and basically stop trying for the rest of the game. Hi everybody, I'm Coach Tickety, and I'm here to tell you that you should never give up in a game of Overwatch 2, and I'll tell you exactly why in this video. If you like this type of content, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know down in the comments what's the best comeback you've ever had in a game of Overwatch 2. And if you're looking for ways to improve your play and get better at carrying yourself through those quote-unquote unwinnable games, then you should head over to Gameleap.com. Over there you'll find hundreds of guides made by our top-level coaches, with more being added every single week that cover everything from the basics to in-depth character knowledge presented in step-by-step guides to help you go from zero to hero in no time. So whether you're brand new to the game or trying to hit a new peak this season, the guides on our website can help you achieve your goals. So click the link below this video or just head over to Gameleap.com and get your membership started today. Alright, before we jump into the advice, a quick PMA word from yours truly. Keep in mind that this type of video is going to be mainly geared towards competitively driven players, those who want to be the best they can be and climb up the leaderboard. If you're playing the game to have fun or just join up with your friends, that is fine, there's nothing wrong with that, and you should keep that motivation every single time you play. Additionally, if you ever feel really frustrated with the game, if you come off a really hard loss or you don't feel good about playing the next game, you should absolutely take a break. I know the joke is that you should go outside and touch grass, but no joking, it is very important to be able to disconnect when things start feeling emotional or frustrating or things like that, so that you can mentally reset, refocus on the game at a later time, and you don't ruin your experience for the rest of the day. Alright, now let's talk about why you should never give up in a game of Overwatch 2. The first reason is simple. You only have control over your own actions, and you can very easily lose control of those actions if you start focusing on too many outside factors. If you fill your mind with thoughts about how terrible your teammates are or how dumb that last team fight was, you're going to miss opportunities in game where you could have had more control and made better plays. So stay focused in the moment and stay ready to take the next fight instead of worrying about what happened previously. And keep in mind that even if your teammates are making a bunch of mistakes to you, you don't know what's going on from their POV. And at the very least, even if whatever they're doing doesn't make sense, you should still be able to use it to your advantage in some way or another. Let's say you're playing DPS and your main tank just keeps charging into the fight as Reinhardt and instantly dying. That's obviously not great, but that doesn't mean you can't find something to do during those few seconds that Reinhardt is taking a bunch of attention to try and maybe trade out a kill or two as he's going in. Moral of the story, never give up, because you never quite know exactly what could happen, and if we stop trying altogether, we lose that control over ourselves and we basically hand the game over to our opponents for free. The next thing to keep in mind is that Overwatch is insanely complicated as a game. There are so many different variables that are constantly changing, which means no two team fights will ever be exactly the same. Even if you're going up against the same opponents, the same heroes, and you're playing with the same team composition on the same area of the map, people will position differently, use cooldowns differently, hit shots differently, and of course have different ultimates available. This means that even after you lose a fight, or two, or three, or maybe more than that, you should never give up, because you never know exactly what the next team fight is going to look like, and you should never stop looking for ways to win, because you never know. The next fight might just be exactly what your team needed to get the ball rolling. Like I mentioned before, it's usually pretty obvious when you notice teammates making some pretty silly mistakes, when they're overextending themselves, getting picked off for no reason, and stuff like that. What's a little bit harder to notice is when the enemy is doing the exact same thing. You never want to forget that an early advantage can come from an enemy mistake. It doesn't always need to be something you work really hard for, it could just be a silly mistake that the enemy is making, so we always want to be available to capitalize on that moment. If we spend too much time beating ourselves up, or worse, beating our teammates up in our heads, we're never going to have our eyes open and ready to react to those situations because we're going to be too busy thinking about everything else that happened previously. Just keep in mind that everyone playing this game with or against you is another human being, and people make mistakes all the time. We should be quick to forgive our teammates, and we should be equally quick to punish our enemies when they present that weakness to us. The most common situation where I see players simply give up in a competitive setting is after a weak attacking round, and I'm guilty of this myself. I get it. It feels like sometimes you just get full held, or you only make it to a certain percentage of the map and you feel like there is no way you can perform as well as the enemy team after that round. In these situations, you have to remember a very simple fact. Attacking is way harder than defending in Overwatch 2. When you're on defense, you by default have a positional advantage for the very first teamfight, and usually every subsequent teamfight after that first one as well, which means you can have better positioning for longer, you can use more of your teammates' damage to keep the enemies at bay, and the attackers need to be more creative about how they take space, how they clear out those defending positions, and in some maps, for example, say like Dorado on first point, there's a lot of hard positioning you have to deal with. There's a bunch of high grounds and long sight lines you have to worry about. That is not an easy task for any attacking team. So just because in your attacking round it feels like you and your teammates were completely out of sync and you weren't able to make as much progress as you were hoping, it's very possible that you and your team are able to mount an even better defense than your opponents, and you're able to hold them even closer or delay their progress for even longer. By the way, this nature of attacking versus defending situation is exactly what makes King of the Hill such an evenly balanced map type in my opinion, and is also what makes push maps so difficult for a lot of teams, since in those maps you're put into attacking situations more often than any other map type. But that's a topic for another video. Moving on, now I'm talking directly to those competitively driven players, those who are truly trying to become the best players they can be. You need to think bigger than just a single game of Overwatch, and by that I mean you cannot let yourself develop bad habits by giving up in any game you're faced with. Whether we like it or not, we have to accept the fact that we will lose games. If we're at a rating that's equal to our skill level, we'll lose about half our games. That's by nature how the matchmaker works. But if we want to become a better player and improve our skill level and therefore increase our win rate, we need to build good habits and stay consistent with our execution in every aspect of our play. When it comes down to the heroes we're playing, the positions we take, the shots we hit, the cooldowns we use, everything comes down to consistency. If we give up in these competitive games and don't focus on building that consistency, we not only waste a lot of our time where we could be practicing all those different skills, but we actively deter ourselves from becoming consistent because we'll be giving up, not trying, not thinking, and inadvertently building bad habits in our play that we might not be able to shake off later. So no matter what game you find yourself in, please try your best to do everything you can. Even if the win is impossible, you need to stay consistent as a player because you don't want to revert into old habits and become worse overall. And that leads me to my next piece of advice, which is that every single game you play is a learning opportunity for you, even the losses. Better yet, especially the losses. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that we should feel excited about losing a game of Overwatch, definitely not, but what I'm saying here is that if we don't treat every game as a learning opportunity, we'll be caught in a negative mindset of feeling desperate for wins and feeling powerless for our growth when the tools are right in front of us. Every single time we lose a game, and every single time we even lose a single team fight in a game of Overwatch, is a strong learning opportunity because it's a situation where we were presented with a problem and we didn't quite have the answer to it. Maybe our mechanics weren't quite up to par, maybe we weren't playing the optimal hero for the given situation, maybe our positioning was just straight up bad. Whatever the situation was, we need to learn from it so that when we're faced with that problem again in the future, we know what the possible answers might look like and we can better be prepared for those situations later on. Now, this doesn't mean we need to spend an hour in the replay viewer going over every single one of our deaths in a game that we lost, but it does mean that every time we have a question about what went wrong, we should try to come up with an answer for ourselves. Maybe it's a hero swap, maybe it's a new position, maybe it's just saving an important cooldown. Whatever it is, that's something we can focus on doing the next time we're faced with that same problem, and then see if the results change at all. Now, obviously, I know you're never going to win every single game of Overwatch you play, and there straight up will be just awful, horrible, no good games where people leave early or disconnect or are actively trolling your games. We obviously don't want to focus on those games, but every other situation, even the bad feeling games, we can definitely learn from, improve from, and be better equipped for the next time we face them. So I hope the advice in this video helps you stay motivated during your competitive grind and helps give you something to focus on other than all those feeding teammates we keep queuing into. But that's going to be all for me today, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.